Hello, and welcome to the third event of the UK-HRI Expert Seminar Series on methods and best practices in human-robot interaction research. I'm Claire Asher, freelance science communicator and host of the Robot Talk podcast, and I'm excited to be your host for today's seminar. We'd like this to be a really friendly, welcoming environment, so please say hello in the chat and let us know where you're watching from today. This afternoon, we're very lucky to be joined by Professor Angelo Cangelosi from the University of Manchester, who's going to be talking about cognitive developmental robotics. Before I give the floor to Angelo, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Patrick Holthouse, who leads the UK-HRI topic group, to give us a very brief overview of what the group is all about. Over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Claire. Welcome everybody to Angelo's very exciting talk today. I'm going to quickly say something about UK-HRI Topic Group, which is a funded initiative by the UK-RAS network, so basically receives money from UK-HRI to disseminate best practices and methods between human-robot interaction researchers. This initiative is led by the University of Hertfordshire, by me, in collaboration with Aberystwyth University, with Patricia Shaw, and Harvard University, Daniel Hernandez Garcia. We are thankful for getting that funding and providing this seminar to you. Just a quick few words about how we are organized. As I said, we try to disseminate best practices amongst HRI researchers and provide guidance for new coming researchers in the field, and also provide a mapping of what the UK has to offer in terms of HRI research. We offer this advisory group where people can engage with us. So we created a network of now more than 25 advisors from 17, 19 institutions now, where people can apply for mentorship and advisory. We have 3 mentorships going on already. So it's a really, really vivid network where we can get to know other people. The second leg that we offer is these research experience grants, where you can come as an emerging researcher and do some experience at a different university for a short-term visit. Go to our website and see if you can apply for these if you're interested in going for a short stay, for example, to our lab or to other labs to see how HRI research works and gain some experience there. Thanks very much and enjoy the seminar. Over to you, Angelo.
So I'd like to start by thanking, of course, the organizer, Claire and Patrick, but it's nice to also see indirectly connected and also co-organizing this event with Patricia and Daniel in Edinburgh. So this talk has really 2 parts. Of course, it focuses on my research, it builds on my experience, and it then will discuss 3 challenges in HRI for future work. The first 2 are directly related to my work on language learning, which is my core research. Of course, language learning in robots, which is necessary for communication between robots and people. And then the third one will be a more general discussion, I hope it will really start a discussion between people who are pro or against LLM and their use in the field of HRI, because it's a big debate and it's something that is with us, and we need to reflect on what they are, what they do, and how can we use them, and which shouldn't use them also. So what's the context of my research, which is really the context of a lot of HRI areas? I primarily look at social robots as companions for older people. I've done this in some European projects and also part of my ERC project and other UK-funded projects. More recently, I started to work on children as tutors for language learning, also for mathematics, for numbers concept. We'll talk about this later. And of course, cobots, you see there on the right, top right, it's an important area. And also the bottom highlights not only the aspects of linguistic communication, but also tactile and non-verbal communication, which is important. This is part of a tactile system, and I'm collaborating with a company in China that develops this for humanoid robots now. But let's start from an old video, which is a project that was led by Paolo Dario and Filippo Cavallo a few years ago. We were partners when I used to be in Plymouth, and this was a collection of 3 robots, all working with older people. So let's look at the video, it's not the video of the results, but it's the video of the vision that helped us to develop the project. I'm going to skip, it's a long video, so I'm going to focus on 2 or 3 steps. So there are a project is called Robot Era. There are 3 robots. One is called Doro, domestic robot. This is the robot that lives in your own flat, apartment. It will support you by doing some cooking. It can make you a cup of tea. We'll go back to cup of tea in a moment. And you can also talk to the robot using speech or using a tablet to order your food, order your medicines from a site. The distinctive value of this project was to have 3 robots collaborating together to support all people. So domestic robot Doro, and then you have Oro, outdoor robot, which is a robot that works outside. Here it is. And it will do the shopping for you. So you ask your domestic robot to do the shopping, it will go and get it for you. And it will walk around the town. This page, the small town here at Pisa, where we did the experiment. This Oro outdoor robot will go to the box of flats. Accommodation. This is a third robot called Toro, condominium robot, like a worker, like a worker. It will collect the shopping from this outdoor robot. And then later, the condominium robot will go to the flat and give the food or the medicine to the indoor domestic robot, right? So distinctive value of this project was collaboration, and of course, very important. This was the video division. The results were more limited than what I would have shown here. This is the ideal scenario. And more importantly, we decided together with the users were the older people, future users, but also carers, doctors, geriatric hospitals, families, 11 tasks on which to focus. Of course, we can't expect the robots to do everything. And the reason I'm showing this video is because I would like to focus on a simple request that we can give to a robot, and the solution that now systems like LLMs and VLAs, visual language action models, give us to use these robots in a more efficient way. So although I'm Italian, I moved to the UK almost 30 years ago, and the reason they sent me away from Italy was because I don't like coffee. I'm one of the few Italians who doesn't like coffee, so not allowed to be there. I like tea, and they sent me to Britain, which is meant to be the tea country, which is not really. I'm sorry for my British fellow academics, because the real good tea comes from Asia and many other countries. But regardless of this, so I like tea, and I'm getting older, so maybe one day I will be a user in one of these projects, and I would like the robot to make me a cup of tea. So if this robot, let's say a pepper robot, or the G5, we call this robot they use in the video, I ask the robot to make me a cup of tea. The robot can rely on an LLM or VLA to help the task. So if I ask the robot, which relies only on an LLM, pure text-based system, this is what I will get. This is actually the prompt that I used on a ChatGPT version maybe a year ago, making a cup of tea, and I get a recipe, right? I get instructions. Of course, if you connect this LLM to perceptual systems that see where objects are, where the teapot is, and so on, and action primitives, you can in principle get them to act, which is what people are doing. But the core of this experiment, almost like a thought experiment, it's not really an experiment, is to know or to reflect on the fact that the robot is giving me a recipe for me to make it, or it will try to, you will see in a moment, to try to solve the problem by mapping each of these words into some actions and some perceptual properties, but this is not easy. Why? Let's go now from pure text, which isn't enough really for a VLA or for a physical embodied robot acting in the real world in my apartment. Let's go towards multimodal training stimuli, multimodal examples. And again, I Googled about a year ago making cup of tea, and I was lucky enough to find that there is a recipe from the British Standard Institutes that tells us what is the right way to make a cup of tea, at least in the UK. And you see here there are words, which are again are very closely linked to what an LLM will give us. There are images, they are important. A robot needs to see the pot, see the tea leaves, recognize the water, changing color when the tea is ready, and so on. This is so very good. And there is here a symbol that is about, I guess, time, remember. But what I want to focus here on is the fact that about 80%, 80% is an approximate number. 80% of the words in the instructions, but actually some of the images themselves, we know this is a timer, right? But how do you tell the robot this is a time? Also, how do you tell the robot what time is? This is a non-trivial concept. So the highlighted words are words which we call non-concrete or abstract words. So replace, it's a motor word, but replace applies to many different actions. So the mapping between, if I say cup or if I say push, is relatively straightforward. There is only one type of action or one representation for a cup or for a pot with some variations, but replace is hard. The article, and, leave, to, brew. You see, 80% of the words. Why do I say 80%? Because in a study on children and adults, 78% of the language used by adults is actually abstract words. Words where the mapping between the word itself and the meaning in the physical world, but I'm going to talk also about the internal world. Sensorimotor means external physical environment, but also internal states. If I feel sad, there are internal states which I also recognize and perceive in my own way. But the challenge here is that if we want to use these LLMs and link them to robots, there are non-trivial issues, like, for example, teaching a robot the concept of 1, 2, and 3, because if I say for 5 minutes, what's 5? 1.5 grams, or how do I know what's 1.5 in terms of a robot? So what's the solution? The solution nowadays, it seems to be in robot learning and robot control, creating a VLA, visual language action model. There is one extreme. This was the early Google RT robot transformer solution, where you have like a system that transforms an image into words. Words go nicely as a prompt to an LLM. It asks for a recipe, which we saw before, and then ideally the output should really map into physical object that you can manipulate, or action that maybe primitive actions, actions that you can perform. But we said that there are actions like replace, which are non-trivial to represent and to learn and to execute. But also let me reflect on the fact that ChatGPT 22, right, 4 years ago, or 3.5 years ago, the big revolution in the field of AI and machine learning. But 1966, so exactly 60 years ago, Weizenbaum at MIT developed ELIZA, the first chatbot, of course, noting of the complexity of the LLM, but let's also reflect on moments in history which are important, also because today, in my second part of the talk, I'm going to go back to some work in the 90s, which I think is very insightful for our future research in AI, robotics, and HRI. So if I train a robot, pre-train a robot with a GPT, with a transformer, or I just use a dictionary. This is an example from a few years ago. Deb Roy, he uses the example from a dictionary, not from a training, but you can imagine that an LLM can easily do this. So I ask my robot, what's the meaning of push? The robot uses an LLM. It goes and searches from some past memory of the reading of this Webster American English Dictionary, and it will tell me, no problem, I know what push is. So the robot will answer, push is to press forcefully against to move, which is a relatively high-level definition, but that's what we understand and we use, right? So it seems that the robot really knows about pushing, because we know pushing is to apply some force, right, to move an object, and this is what the robot says by using a dictionary definition. But now let's challenge the robot understanding of this concept of push by asking, for example, what it means force. And here, force and push are chosen on purpose because they are very concrete, right? Push is a primitive that the robot can apply with a hand, just a motor, 1 degree of freedom can push an object on a table. Force, robots have motors and we have force sensors, so it should be straightforward for the robot to understand, between quotes, these words. But here, because it's all a symbolic system, this is called a modal. A modal is a representation based just on symbols or text, which is what an LLM does. So I ask for the definition of force, and because of this dictionary LLM solution, I get energy or strength, which is good. We understand this makes sense. Now, what's energy? And energy is defined as strength of force, which you see it's a bit of an issue. So force is defined by energy, and then energy is defined by force. And if you continue to go into this direction, you can see that all these vicious circles, they are called the merry-go-round by Stephen Harner. You see there an image on the top right of a merry-go-round game, right? You start and you end up in the word. So it's a salad of words, right? Which is what maybe LLMs do, or maybe not. We can debate this later. So I hope this shows you that there is a bit of an issue if we rely on a pure a-modal symbolic system, which is a text-based or token-based LLM, we should say. Now, this is also related to a philosopher's reflection on the Chinese room experiment. Now I like to call it a room experiment. So let's watch the video. If you have seen my talks, you recognize the video. For those who are new, let's watch the video that nicely describes this Chinese room experiment.
In the 1980s, the philosopher John Searle was chewing on this problem, and he came up with a thought experiment that gets right at the heart of it. And he called this the Chinese room.
The experiment goes like this. I'm locked in a room. Outside, there's someone who only communicates in Chinese. She writes out some questions and then posts those to me in the room.
Now, I don't speak Chinese, but I do have these books, and they give me instructions on exactly what to do with these symbols. So I look in the book, and if I can find a match to the symbols, then the book tells me exactly how to respond. So I can look up this response. That matches.
I'm stopping this. Just let's call this a prompt, right? You get a prompt from the lady in writing. You match it to your memory, and then you are going to give a prediction of the next words.
So now I can post this as the reply to the message I received.
When our Chinese speaker receives the message, it makes perfect sense to her.
您最喜欢哪一本书？哪里是中国的首都？你梦里梦到什么？
As far as she's concerned, we're having a conversation in her language.
Just by following a set of instructions, I can convince somebody on the outside that I speak Chinese. And if I have a large enough set of response books, I can have a conversation about anything. But here's the important part. I, the operator, do not understand Chinese.
So very important, I, the operator, David, does not understand Chinese. He also says if I have a big enough set of examples and words and dictionaries, which is what an LLM can do, right? Huge data set, I can create a conversation, which is what we get. So, but we accept as true the fact that David does not understand any of the linguistic interaction happening between the prompt from the Chinese speaking lady and the answer that she gets, which are meaningful to her, but not to David. Now, if you are not convinced that David doesn't understand, I'm going to do this exercise. If you've seen this, ignore me, but if for those who are new to this kind of talk, it's a language that I know, it's not Italian. I'm going to ask you here on top, quanti anni avevi la picciotta? And to do this, I'm going to pre-train you quickly, almost few shot learning, let's say, with a dictionary. So there are words in this physical, I created a story, right? Where there is the word like push, energy, strength. So picciotta, setti, anni, picca, pitito, manciare, and so on. You see some words are repeated, other change, haddina. Then there is a book, like in the video, with 2 pages. For each time you browse, I said the 2 pages, you get a different question. So here, to simplify the exercise, let's do only 2 possible questions. Quanto pitito, quanti anni avevi? So I'm going to ask you, quanti anni avevi la picciotta? So please, let's see if I can see the chat. I don't know if you can, let's try to type in the chat the answer to my question on top. Quanti anni avevi la picciotta? I help you by showing you that I highlight what I'm doing, right? Let's see if anybody's replying. Quanti anni avevi la picciotta? La picciotta avevi 8 anni. Very good. Can we change A to something? This number doesn't mean anything to me. So let's answer properly in the sense that let's not cheat if you know some of the words. Let's try to speak this strange language. Quanti anni ha la picciotta? La picciotta aveva 7 anni. Excellent. So, very quickly, Cristina Palmero. You have an Italian name, so you are cheating a bit, but it's fine. La picciotta aveva 8 anni. Shangwang, okay, that's okay. You are not Italian speaker. It's not Italian, but it's similar to Italian. Okay, but very good. La picciotta aveva 7 anni. Okay, Christina was right. So what is Christina doing? What I'm doing here in this, remember symbol mapping. Question, prompt, quanti anni avevi la picciotta? So, quanti anni avevi, you see there is a matching there. So I'm matching them. X is a variable that can change. So in this case, X is picciotta, right? So I'm highlighting the question. I found the page 2 in my book. I highlight in my brain, in my, if you want, transformer, the word picciotta because this has been activated. But you will see that later I need to activate also the word anni. And now I start to build the answer. La ex avi. Ex is picciotta, so la picciotta avi. Excellent. Now we need to substitute, continue with 2 more words, A and Anni. A, B, X are variables. They are there on purpose to make you work a bit. That's why when I got the reply, La picciotta ave A anni was a correct answer, but let's go a bit deeper. So how do I do A anni? I activate anni, I go into my memory, my transformer, attention mechanism, I find anni twice, right? So what is the context that is most strongly activating the words anni and picciotta, and what's closer to this? It's clearly the word in the middle, right? Setti. So setti has a high coactivation in my attention transformer. So the answer would be la picciotta ave 7 anni. So setti is because anni and picciotta are coactivated. So what we did is just pure words, meaningless words. Again, if you know Italian, 50% maybe of the words are similar. If you don't know Italian, then if you know Spanish, but let's pretend you are Chinese, like my postdoc Shangwang, and you have very little knowledge of Italian, but ignore the meaning, this is the whole point, and talk to me in Sicilian. So let's reflect on this, and what I'm going to show to you that up to now, you are the robot, I'm the person, or vice versa. There is really no understanding, okay? Because no one knows what la picciotta means. So how do we start to help the robot to understand my language? This is actually Sicilian dialect. Should be more precise. This is the dialect from West Sicily, where Palermo is. I'm actually today in Catania, which is East Sicily, where some of the words are actually different. So picciotta is not in the dictionary of Catania, Sicilia. So how do I start to get the meaning of words? Let's go to philosophy. Quine. Quine wants to understand how we can build and represent meanings and learn meanings from our experience with the world. And in a famous book and paper, he says the word gavagai. He makes another thought experiment. Let's assume we hear the word gavagai. If we go to the Amazon, we've discovered a new tribe which has never been in contact with us English speakers. We hear the word gavagai and we need to guess the meaning of gavagai in their local language. And if again were to actually, let's do this because you were very collaborative. Let's go in the chat. Please type the possible meanings. This is very important because the whole point of Quine is there is no single meaning. The possible meanings of gavagai. So can you please type? I need 3 or 4 examples. Let's see if you are prototypical. Feeding, what else? Only feeding. The rabbit, very good. Food, excellent. I think I got what I wanted because first I needed rabbit. The majority of you, if we did some statistics, thank you for the second rabbit. So, okay, you can stop there. Very good. So the majority of you said rabbit or would have said rabbit if I did a proper study. Why did you do this? Because when we were babies, we were using a mechanism and you are still using a mechanism called shape bias. 2-year-old children, when they learn words, they have a bias, like a cognitive bias, a default option that says, if I hear a new word, gavagai, then this must refer to the main shape, the most salient shape, the most visible active shape, which is rabbit. So the majority will say first rabbit, but then of course food, carrot, girl is right, but also I like the answer grass. Even a background shape is actually valid. Now let's continue. So we don't know the word. Okay, we don't know yet what it means. Let's keep the chat open now. Can you tell me what's the meaning of gavagai in the second experience that we are having in this Amazon forest? So what are the possible meanings? Remember, there is more than one. So it's not rabbit anymore. What else is there? Can I have some answers, please? There is no food there. It's a puppy, very good. Pet, excellent animal, excellent. Field, and you can still remember big grass. Very good. Well done. So Quine says that it's very hard to know if the word refers to the whole animal or parts of the animal because I didn't focus on this. It could be the eyes of the robot, right? It could be the ears, sorry, of the robot, of the animal there, the dog or the pet. So let's go back to Sicilian. I'm going to teach you how to speak Sicilian by doing something which we call grounding. So what's the meaning of picciotta in Sicilian? Or I would say, what are the possible meanings? And imagine most of you will say girl, which is correct, but also it could be happy, young, person, hair, cheek, red cheeks, and so on. All these words are correct. The second mechanism, in addition to shape bias, is called cross-situational learning. When I show you the rabbit and the dog, you are comparing a cross situation. So let's continue other Sicilian words. Ovo is very easy, right? Because of the shape bias, there is one shape, we call it the egg shape, so oval shape, so ovo means egg. Semenza, it's a bit trickier. It means seeds, maybe it means food, maybe it means, I don't know, two. But what matters here is the top words are concrete words where the shape and the word and the meaning are kind of one-to-one correlated, like egg and girl. Now let's reflect on abstract words. So what's the meaning of picca? Again, we don't have time to go into the chat. So most of you could say three, many eggs, more than one egg, few eggs. You could say food and so on. But let's do cross-situational learning. So it's not three anymore. It's not eggs anymore. It could still be food, right? Now, if I keep doing this, now cross-situational learning makes me reflect it's not food, because assai and picca is used for food, and also semenza. They all match. So I guess you can guess the main difference is few and many, which is correct. And finally, manciare. What's manciare? It's a Sicilian pizza. It's Mr. Bean, it's Teddy Bear. But if I show you the video, the action, you can guess it's about the action. We call it verb, right? So now that I'm teaching you Sicilian, right? Or I'm teaching my robot to speak Sicilian because I'm getting old. I go back to my original language, right? And I will want to order my cup of tea using Sicilian words. So first challenge that we have is how do we let robots understand words, going beyond a simple amodal symbolic representation. First for concrete words, which is kind of easier, and there are many solutions, and then we move towards abstract words. So the way we do it in our approach called developmental is we model in the robot the learning steps of language learning. So let me show you an example from a study by Luca Raggioli during his Marie Curie PhD with me. This is here an experimental language learning by Chen Yu and Linda Smith. Let's look at the video collected during the experiment. A camera on the forehead of the child on the left and the forehead of the parent on the right. I'm going to show you this video more than once. This is what the child sees. This is what the parent sees. Very different world, right? And when we look at, now I want to stop in a moment. Okay, I want to stop here for a purpose. Can you see how very different is what the parent sees? The parent sees the child, three objects, right? The child sees one object. Not only the child has something called shape bias. So here I have one shape, let's call it microphone. So if the parent says, this is blah blah, gava guy, then for me as a child, this is very easy. We call this scaffolding. We are simplifying the learning task by helping the child to focus on the core target object, which is when the child looks at it, or the parent can actually take the object, move it closer to the head of the child, and then name it. So Luca did some experiments combining passive teaching of words and active teaching. Let's look at the robot video in a moment. So passive.
This is a bottle.
Okay.
More passive. You see what we
This
see
is a
as
cell phone.
teachers on the left and what the robot sees. Now the robot
This is a
sees one
cup.
shape
Perfect.
for cup because the parent is producing this scaffolding aspect. Okay, so this shows that we have done a lot of work on this and many others. It is relatively easy to teach the robot the meaning, the grounding of concrete objects. But how are we going to, the real challenge is how do you teach concepts which are abstract, like numbers, as an example? The way we do this is, again, by looking at child development, and we know that we use embodied strategies like finger counting or gestures, and this is what we have been doing in the past. This is also finger counting. On the left, you see data from children and experiments. So we really copy the setup of a child experiment and we embed this into the strategy for the, there is some neural network behind this. And we are continuing to work on this.
I got 2 plus 2.
Okay, the robot will do this. We are continuing. This is my current ERC advanced project, and I have 3 postdocs. Shangwang is here, and is working on more experiments on the embodiment of numbers, for example, plus other aspects of abstract words. So challenge 1 and 2 is about learning words, which is what I do. Now, challenge 3 is a bit more theoretical and practical from a wider machine learning point of view. So any use of a robot nowadays in HRI will imply AI. Okay, it could be a VLA, it could be an LLM, it could be an old-fashioned, I don't know, a forest, random forest approach. What matters is that we are going to use some kind of AI or maybe symbolic AI. So let's reflect on challenge 3, which is the one that I hope will start the debate. So this is about LLMs. So let's look at the positive first. So there are huge opportunities. We have huge opportunities. And one way, first reflection is, I, Angelo, cannot believe they are working this well, these LLMs, no grammatical errors, and it produces very interesting things. And for me, the hallucination is not really an issue in the sense that hallucination, which we call generalization in neural networks, is actually part of the feature of this. And I'm showing here Tony Belpame, my friend Tony. We were colleagues in Plymouth because he's an enthusiast about LLMs and robots and dialogue. So positives, how can we use an LLM or a VLA? For dialogue, that's the first obvious answer. A chatbot, right? ChatGPT chatbot. For vision and speech, we can optimize speech comprehension. What we can do now with Whisper or the systems is unthinkable up to a few years ago in terms of robustness. Of course, nothing is perfect, but it's strong. Vision is, again, object recognition is quite easy. I've done some discussion with a colleague on using for autobiographical memory. You can have you can use RAG, this kind of search within a database, which could be photos of your previous experiment. You could save all your images of your past events, and then you do a search with a RAG on your past memory. Or you can just build a knowledge base from the data. For me, an LLM is not a language system, it's a knowledge based with a data-driven approach, because you have this representation of semantics. But semantics without understanding, this is important. Then if you have VLA, visual language model, and you have multimodal aspects, representation, is this grounding? Maybe we are moving towards grounding with VLA, but this is part of a research question. But let's stop with the positives, because when people get old, like me, we get grumpier. Okay, so we are never happy. Actually, I'm an optimist, but at the moment with LLMs, I'm a bit worried, and you will see why. So let's reflect on the issue of training and using an LLM. Data, access to data. This is some numbers given to me by Navigli. Navigli is the Italian NLP researcher who built the Italian language LLM called Minerva. So LLM, you need trillions of tokens. A good reader reads less than 1 billion. So from trillions to less than 1 billion, 200,000 per week, approximate numbers. These are numbers from a paper in cognitive science. You see, the scale is, of course, non-linear. in the vertical axis, you see the human bound, human region in terms of data, words, versus a GPT-3, which is now prehistory of transformers, right? You can imagine it. So we are very, very far in terms of complexity. So let's focus on children, because you can see that most of the work I do is about children, and it's about learning, bottom-up learning. Start small is the subtitle. So ChatGPT-3 was trained on 10 to the 11 tokens. More complex would be 10 to 12, but really this number grows continuously. A child is 10 to the 6th per month, and then 20 years of age, you have done 3 times 10 to the 7th, or maybe to 10 to the 8th. Again, non-comparable numbers. I always say a 10-year-old child is more competent than a LLM in terms of not only production, linguistic production, of course, real understanding of things. And we are not even talking here about, so from data, we go to the structure of, or the properties of these models, these transformers. The long-term the long-term memory, I should say LTM memory, is too strong in the sense that you overlearn on the data, and then the short-term memory, the working memory, is actually again too good, although this is mapped into a sequence of activations. Remember, a transformer is not a recurrent network, is a chain of transformer events which we read as, let's say, working memory. So from one point of view, there is no working memory in a transformer, one way to see it, or by combining a chain of events where you adapt in the prompt the previous output of the system, then you get some kind of sequential representations. So let's now reflect on what are my personal issues with an LLM specifically, token only, not VLA. I like VLAs more. Me as a cognitive scientist, for those that don't know, I study psychology. I approach robotics as a way to understand cognition, of course, as a way to build artificial systems and robots, but for me, it's as a way to understand cognition. So what are my issues? First, they shouldn't be called language L models, large language models. They should be called large text model, large token models. So this is already an issue. There is no language there. There is text. A language is more than text because language is semantics, pragmatics. Pragmatics are the understanding of the meaning within the context, within the task and the goal that you want to achieve. There is no understanding in an LLM. If I ask quanti anni lavi la picciotta to an LLM which has been trained on the Sicilian dialect, I get a nice answer, but the system has no understanding. The same way, if I do a Chinese room experiment with Sicilian, which is what we did, I, as the operator, you, the operator, do not understand Sicilian. This is what David said. I, the operator, do not understand Chinese. So no understanding. We can debate about this. There are philosophical theories that there is understanding in the system, but for me, you have no understanding of Sicilian if you can answer to me in Sicilian when I ask you the question simply by using this mapping exercise, this symbol manipulation exercise. There is no embodiment, there is no body. Even if the system extracts statistical similarities of body parts, there is really no understanding within the system. And we can debate this later. And there is always somebody who disagrees with me, which is nice. This is the whole point of doing science. GPTs, transformers, are, for me, cognitive scientists, the most non-cognitive neural network because there is no time, no recurrency. It's unlimited attention. Remember, attention is all you need, the paper that he proposed transformer for the first time. But attention is all you need. We say in human cognition, selective attention is all you need. When I read a book, I pay attention to one word and few words before and after. I don't pay attention to thousands or millions of words. A transformer, which with a context size and input of, I don't know, 10,000, 100,000 tokens, is paying attention to each individual token and the relationship between each token and all the other remaining 9,999 tokens, like you are paying attention to everything at the same time, which is non-human. It's superhuman from a negative point of view, I believe. There is no memory, no time. We discussed this before. And then I show you the data, right? The number of data that you need to pre-train a transformer is not comparable with the little data that you need for other human-like systems. And then we can debate this later. Forget about AGI. You will never get AGI with a transformer. I know Elon Musk and friends and some Altam, they want your billions, so they will tell you the vision of AGI because they need them billions. But if you want to give them billions, it's fine. Invest the money in these companies. No one giving you any financial advice, but not scientifically speaking. Don't think you will get AGI from that. But again, some of you hopefully will disagree with me. So what's the solution? The solution is going beyond large data. And what can we observe in human cognition? There is pre-existing neural structure. The link between the retina and the brain is only directly linked to the occipital, right, back area of the brain. So there is structure which has been evolved with evolution. There are maturation mechanisms. Memory capabilities evolve. The wiring of the brain, the pruning of the brain happens only in specific critical periods. We are multimodal system. We have pre-existing knowledge. We are social interactive system. That's how we learn and how we select the input. And we have, of course, realistic, limited short-term memory and relatively large, but not unlimited, long-term memory when we set events. So small, not large, data and models is what we should be looking at from a cognitive point of view so that our robots for HRI will be more human-like because at the end they need to interact with humans, right? This is the subtitle of my talk, which is actually a subtitle of a paper by Jeff Hellman, 93, Learning Development Neural Network, the importance of starting small. I spent a year on my PhD in 94, 95 in San Diego with Jeff Hellman. So it's nice to go back to this. And why is this important? I'm going to tell you about this paper because it's a very toy model, but it's a toy model with a very impactful set of not predictions, statements and methodologies. First, he is the guy who used, I don't know if he's the guy who used it first, who invented the concept of next word prediction. In the original paper, 1990, Find the Structure in Time, there is a task on learning the next character of a word, and then there is learning the next word in a sentence. So word prediction is what he used, which is what transformers use. Also, he selected a series of 500, I think about 500 sentences with nested grammatical structure. So cat chases dogs, very simple, noun, verb, object, and then nested. Boys who chase dogs see girls. So boys see girls, main sentence, and then there is a sub-nested sentence, who chase dog? The boys, and the boys who chase the dogs, these boys also see the girls. And it took an arbitrary, they are called Hellman network or simple recurrent network, an arbitrary network, and it started to use 3 methods to train the network. If you show all these 500 sentences with different level of complexity, we call it the ADOT data, this network, arbitrarily small, let's say, will not learn this, which is fair enough. Of course, you can increase the size of your network, more layers, more units, and it will learn. But the whole point is, let's choose a network which cannot learn. And then let's do something else. Maybe let's go back to our data, which first train the system to say, cats chase dogs, Mary feeds John. And after you learn this simple, non-nested sentence, you start to have 2 levels, 1 level of nestedness, and then you can have 2, 3 levels and so on. Incremental or curriculum data. In this case, you do learn, the network learns, although Hellman says, oh, actually, this is not really kind of human-like. This is not what we do. We do use Mother Reese, a simplified language, but at the same time, we speak full human-like language, and children are exposed to full human-like languages from the beginning. Another intuition, which is a good point here, is maturation in memory. And if you do this, what does it mean? In this Hellman network, you can reset the memory, the past memory, in your short-term memory, because it's a recurrent network. And what it does, Hellman, in the training, that for the first, let's say, 2 epochs, your memory can only memorize 2 words. Boy chase, chase girls. Okay? revise, because of the memory, you only pay attention to two words, and then your memory grows over time. You have maturation of memory capabilities. Then you can remember three words: boy chase girls, and then you can do four, five. So memory changes instead of the data changing. And if you do this, you have good training. The simple message here is that by changing this data structure or maturational mechanisms, you can get a small network to learn complex structures, which is what we want to do. Of course, Hellman, in addition to this paper in 93, then in 96, co-edited with other people a paper which was all about changing our vision of innateness. So it's not nature versus nurture versus nature, but it's more complex than this because of the maturation. And this is aligned really with my presentation, which if you've seen my talk in other times, where developmental robotics, where many of us work, is actually been proposing the same approach for years with a different emphasis, of course, here more on the embodiment linguistic side. So let me conclude, because we should have time for a discussion here, I'm going to skip this by having the three challenges and potential discussion, but you can also, of course, ask your own question. First, challenge one, embodied concrete words. How do we represent sensorimotor internal embodiment, in particular internal embodiment? How do I represent emotions, for example, internally, not only recognizing from a face of a person or a robot? And then is there understanding of LLMs? Do you agree with me, or some of you think actually there is structural understanding in LLM? Abstract words, there is semantic from statistics. Some theories say you get abstract words because of the relation between words. Other people say you need embodiment. What's your point of view? And one theory of abstract words by Gabriela Vigliocco, UCL London, is that if you represent, for example, social relationship, father, mother, friend, peer, these are non-concrete concepts that you can then use to generalize to more abstract concepts. But how do I represent this relationship, social relationship within the state of a neural network, for example? Then challenge three, first, there is no way back from LLM. I'm not saying don't use LLM. I'm saying use LLM where appropriate with the assumption that you need to say. There is no way back. They are too powerful, and we will be using them in real-world application and also in robotics. But remember the limitations and the assumption that you have to do when you look at this. And of course, ideally, we need people who look at the future post-LLM, post-transformers models, which allow selective attention, short-term memory, maturation capabilities, pre-wiring of your systems to look at the future of AI, of course, and then the use of AI in human-robot interaction. And I think I can stop here by giving back control to, I guess, Patrick and Claire.
Thank you, Angelo, for a fascinating talk. Lots to think about there. So we've got some time for some questions now. We haven't had any questions come in on the Q&A yet, so please don't be shy. Please do type them into the Q&A, or you can raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. And I can see one raised hand already. So I will ask you to unmute and you can ask your question.
There is one from Patrick, I guess. Is this a question, Patrick?
Yeah. I added a question as well. Yes.
So you have somewhat hinted at this already, but why do you think machines are so bad at understanding human relationship? If you refer to my last point, how do we map this? I think it's not that the machines are limited. I still cannot think of a way to represent. My whole point, I've been a neural network person for 30 years. We used to call ourselves connectionist, distributed PDP, parallel distributed processing. The idea is that within a neural network unit or layer, you have a concept which is distributed, not symbolically defined. So it's very easy to have in a symbolic network a node for father, a node for mother, a node for parents, a node for friend, and so on. But how do you let this emerge, a distributed concept? How do you kind of find the data to show a network, therefore a machine and robot with a machinery behind this, concept of father, mother, and so on. This is why I think it's difficult. Not that machines cannot do it, it's hard for us to think of a way to do it, maybe.
Thanks. And in interaction, like when the robot is in an interaction with different, say, family members, that seems to be challenging as well to understand.
Yes, exactly. Yes. You know, just friends of trustworthy, not trustworthy friend. It's a challenge. I still don't know how to do this other than cheating and having an artificial, you know, layer or embedding that you say it's parent and child and mother and father. I don't like this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Zigong, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, can I speak now? You can hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for the host, the HRI, and thanks for the speech from Angelo. I noticed that you mentioned that LLM is not language model, it's kind of text model. Uh, Even though we can have embodiment information to let LLM learn later after acquire of pre-trained language, we give action and give body to LLM, then train again. You still don't think it's language, right?
Yes, for me, LLM is not language. It's text. If there is no grounded sensorimotor representation, it still stays there. Let me say this. You can take an LLM representation, you know, a layer, intermediate layer, do your clustering of the representation, and you will get, this is what Hellman actually did in 1993. You can see that animals and human beings are share similarities, but this is exactly what our embeddings do, right? So the system will extract regularities from the embeddings, but this is not because the system has experienced animals versus inanimate things. It's just because the word dog and person and walk and run are more often together than, I don't know, other concepts. So it's in the structure of the data, the tokens, not in the language, because for me, language is pragmatics. It's what I do with language in a sensorimotor world. I know it's a bit of an extreme position, but that's what I believe.
Yeah, but I still want to say, uh, maybe the machine and the CPU, GPU, they create their own language, and we call it a large language model. And we human have all communication tools. So uh, I wanted to know if you think there's so different between two systems.
Okay, I like this proposal in the sense that I've been proposing something related. When I started my PhD in 1995, 395, there was a field. I was part of this community called artificial life, where the idea was you build animal-like agents more than humans, but it could have been humans. Langton, for those of you, Carl Sims, Langton, these were early artificial life people. The idea was, let's not simulate, you know, dog cognition. Let's not simulate birds cognition. Let's simulate new ways to fly, new ways to form a flock. So the flocking paradigm in birds flying doesn't have to be bird-like. Why? Because you create an artificial way to do the same things and then you try to analyze how this machinery builds this knowledge. So for me, an LLM is an artificial life approach to text mapping. So in this sense, I accept that we should use LLM to understand how an artificial system, this is what I say, is so powerful. I really want to understand how it can be so powerful. And this will give us insights in how human cognition is powerful. But remember, we in this planet, we evolved human-like cognition. There might be another planet somewhere away where they use different ways to communicate, which could be similar to what an LLM does, which is purely token-based. So in this sense, yes, but more as a speculation tool rather than a human-like tool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. We've got a few more questions that have come in. So Zichen said, I strongly agree that current LLMs are not language models in the truest sense, I would like to inquire whether it is possible to achieve mapping by simultaneously learning tactile sensations and textual information within a shared feature space. Specifically, to what extent would the integration of haptic feedback and linguistic information influence the emergence of cognition?
Very, very good point, and I agree with this. So definitely yes. It doesn't have to be only tactile. It could be visual and tactile. It could be, I don't know what to say in English, gustative. It could be the mouth's, the foot's sensing, right? It could be anything. So what matters is that whenever you train one multimodal system, these modalities are represented together. You don't have a visual system, a tactile system, which is separate from the LLM, text only, token only, which is separate from the action. They should all be treated together. You should learn latent representations, which are inherently multimodal. So yes, I agree. Of course, tactile is very important because we keep talking about vision. My talk, focus on vision, but tactile is essential in human cognition. Theories of human intelligence say that we are humans, you know, let's say more intelligent or a higher, different level of intelligence, maybe higher than chimpanzees, than a dog or a worm, because we have hands and we have tactile manipulation skills which are very fine. These are also theories of language evolution that says that language evolved in humans, not in other species, because we walk upright, we have our hands, we can use tools, make tools, and tactile sensing is essential of this. So I strongly support research on multimodality with tactile.
Fantastic. Thanks for the great answer. So Marco asked, firstly says, thank you very much for your talk, and says, I want to ask you to develop more the claim by which we cannot achieve AGI with transformers.
Okay, so I'm a psychologist, so I studied the definition of intelligence, and definition of intelligence is, we say, component or multifactorial. When we do a IQ test, we do memory test, recalling n items or chunks of items, numbers or words, and then we look at working memory, and then we do sound related. Intelligence is made of many components. So if we mean intelligence in the psychology sense, multi-component, an a transformer cannot achieve this. If you mean for intelligence, AGI, that in one skill a machine is more powerful than humans, we already have this. A calculator, which was invented many tens of years ago, it's a super intelligent system to do mathematical calculations. So we already have AGI for specific individual skills, but AGI in the real sense that I have many capabilities that work together, this cannot be there in a transformer because of the nature of a transformer. Again, please, when we do a summary with a transformer, right, a GPT, very good, they work well. We know they are not precise, but you are scientist, right? Don't forget the task of a transformer is what's the next word. So if you ask a transformer, very simple question, how do I make a cup of tea? The system will answer, you take a cup, right? Let's pretend this is the answer. Very 4 words to answer question. How do I make a cup of tea? Answer, you need a teapot. Let's assume the correct answer would be you need a teapot. But if you do single word prediction, if I ask the question, how do I make a cup of tea? The answer would be you. Okay, for a transformer, the answer is you, full stop. Then you reuse the you add it to your input. So if I ask the question, how do I make a cup of tea? You, and then the system will continue. So let's not forget, this is what a transformer does. A transformer predicts the next word. So how do I make a cup of tea? The answer is you. It's not you choose a teapot. Don't forget this. So how can you get language from a system that works this way?
Yeah, that's a great point. Brilliant. We had a question over on YouTube, so I want to make sure that the YouTube audience get involved as well. So Julian says, what would a real machine understanding mean? If a VLA puts the embedding for the word pushing, close to that of a video of someone pushing? Is that closer to how humans model such things?
But if you give the system multimodality, then you start to link words, tokens, with experiences, which is an image, which is a tactile pattern. So in this sense, yes, we move towards this if you have multimodality. Now, let me also add something. You can have different levels of understanding in philosophical definition. One is that within your own system, this is what Stephen Harnad said in the symbol grounding problem. Within your own cognitive system, without relying on an interpreter, you really do the mapping between images and internal sensing and words. This is the first level understanding. That's why an LLM, which only has words, can understand. A VLA, maybe yes, because you are combining this concept together. So first level is you have this multimodal linking of components of meanings. Of course, second or third level is you are aware of your own understanding, which we move towards awareness, consciousness, which is not what I'm referring to in this case. Of course, that's interesting. But here, for understanding, I really mean that the system itself can do the mapping between words and so on. So when I ask you quanti anni avevi la picciotta or quanto pititto avevi la picciotta, if you go back to my slide and you answer the question, you will be a parrot spitting words to taking them from this mapping. There is no understanding for you of any story, which for me, because I created a story in my Sicilian artificial world, is meaningful. There is no meaning to you. So when you speak Sicilian to me, unless you come to Sicily and learn the words with your experience, you are not understanding Sicilian. Although you are speaking Sicilian, I think, oh, very good. This is what the Chinese lady thinks, right? Oh, I'm getting the answer for the capital of China.
Yeah. We are over time. There's one really interesting question that if you have a few more minutes, Angelo, that I'd like to ask you. I'm sorry that we're not going to have time to get to all the questions, but I thought this one was particularly interesting. This was submitted on the Q&A, and the question is, do we need LLMs to understand? Could a robot still make you a cup of tea, even if it doesn't know what any of it means?
If you find a solution like artificial world, remember artificial life, if we need a technical solution to do this, it's possible. We don't have to care about this being a transformer or not. I said at the beginning, my approach is to use this system to understand cognition. And also because these systems have to do with we have to interact with humans. So I would expect this is explainable AI, right? If you give me a black box, a full black box where I cannot really interrogate or go inside the mind of this artificial robot, I'm not sure. Remember, there's a link between, sorry, remember, for those familiar with the field, trust and theory of mind, an explanation. You trust the robot if you can get explanation from the robot about its own decision making. And if the robot use human-like mechanism, it can explain them to you. If the robot is using his own artificial world, it cannot give you explanation and you will don't trust the robot. So there are benefits in using human-inspired cognitive approaches. An aircraft doesn't have to, flip its wings to fly. So I might be happy with an aircraft that is not fully related to, let's say, animal cognition, but there are levels of components which are kind of important, especially because we are talking here about our community's human-robot interaction. So these robots are our tools. They are there to help us, and we need to have full control of these tools, also from an ethical point of view. Please, when I get old, don't give me a robot which I cannot, interrogate, because I want to know what I'm using.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an interesting point. I'm really sorry that's all the time we have for today's seminar. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions, and I'm really sorry we haven't had time to get to them all. I'd like to thank Professor Cangelosi for sharing his insights, and thank you to the wonderful audience on Zoom and YouTube for contributing to a really, really interesting discussion. So this is part of an ongoing series of seminars that are being organised by the UK-HRI topic group on methods and best practices in human-robot interaction research. The next seminar will be announced soon on our website, and I've just added links to the chat so that you can keep an eye on the website for announcements, follow the group on LinkedIn, and if you want to get more involved, there's a Discord community that you can join. Thank you again to everyone for joining us, and I hope to see you again at our next seminar.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Angelo.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for the invitation.